All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. All right, welcome everybody in person. Welcome everybody who's tuning online. It's a lovely day outside. We're happy to have you guys join us. We will not be meeting next week. So those who are tuning online, friendly reminder, we will not be tuning in next week. We will be off for a week. So we will not be dropping off produce boxes, unfortunately. We will not be tuning in online. But the week after, we will be right back to business, same time on Wednesdays, and then also the produce boxes after. So again, no meeting next week, no produce box next week, but the week after, we will be right back on it. So again, welcome. Good morning. For those of you who are tuning in online, I will be at your apartment complexes this afternoon right around 1:30 to about 3 or 3:30, depending on how traffic looks. So right around there, I'll contact your coordinator, let them know like 15 minutes before I will be arriving, and then you guys can coordinate and go down, and I will see you then. Those of you who are here today, like usual, unless you are leaving early, you should have gotten yours all set. After the session, we'll get you guys' produce boxes and you'll be all set to go. So I would like to jump into our cooking demo. So I would like to ask you guys if you have any questions, try to put them in the back of your mind and save them until I'm done cooking. If it's super related, feel free to put your hands up. And if you're tuning in online, if you have any questions, whoever is doing your computer, just have them type your questions, and then our technicians will read aloud the questions. So if you have any questions in person, try to save it, or if it's super related, feel free. And if you're online, feel free to type in the chat. Even if it's not a question, if you want to just say hi, even if you want to comment, questions, concerns, anything, feel free to type it in. So once we're done with the cooking demo, we're going to do a little nutrition minute with Dayana, and then we'll be all set. So for today, we have a whole little meal. We are going to be making chicken burgers. So we're going to be using chicken with some vegetables to make a little patty, and we're going to make little sliders. So since there's a bunch of you guys, we're making little ones so that maybe we could even each of us have two. But we're going to go through that recipe. We're also making sweet potato fries. So it's like a burger and a fry, but elevated a little bit healthier ingredients. So the sweet potato fries, it's really just going to have like 3 ingredients: the potatoes, a little bit of seasoning, and some oil. And then with the chicken burgers, we're going to have chicken with some pepper and some seasoning as well. So a super, super simple, maybe 6 ingredient meal. The fries take about 55 minutes. So I'm going to get started on those. I thought ahead, and I already have some baking. So those of you who are in person, we don't have to go over today. But I'm going to start with those. We'll get them popped in. I'll show you how to make the burgers. We'll make a nice little plate, and we'll be good to go. How's that sound? Good. Sound good? All right. Did anybody make the Tuscan bean soup from last week with Shelby? You guys remember her making that last week's recipe? What'd you say?
I said it was good, but I haven't made it yet.
It was good, but you haven't made it again? That's okay. Has anybody made any soup since then? Had any inspiration from that lesson and went home and made your own soup or anything?
Chili.
Who said something? What?
I said chili.
Oh, you made a chili? That's kind of like a soup.
Black bean and pinto beans.
Oh, that's kind of like a soup, right?
Yeah, I did pinto beans, yeah.
Okay. So, no soups. We've made some chili, which is pretty cool.
I like a cabbage soup. I made cabbage and onions and tomatoes and garlic and
A cabbage soup.
yeah.
That sounds pretty good. That doesn't sound bad. I made pierogies this last week, so I should have contacted you to have a little something next to it, have a Polish night. All right, we're going to get started with the fries. Unfortunately, we did run out of paper at the office today, so there are not enough for everybody. But, Dayana, if you'd be so kind, I do have some that maybe you could pass out if people would like to share with your neighbor, just so you can maybe follow along while I'm making the fries. So, with the sweet potato fries, the most challenging part in my opinion and experience, was actually cutting the sweet potatoes. So this was one of the smallest potatoes, sweet potatoes that I could find in the store. Has anybody ever grown sweet potatoes themselves? No? I grew sweet potatoes for the first time this last summer in my own personal garden, and they were like about this big around and about that long. So they're super long and skinny. Did you have that?
I was skinny.
Yours were skinny too? Okay. I don't know if it's something that I did wrong, if I didn't plant them in enough, but they were not as thick as these. So either these are probably just grown in a better climate. I'm assuming maybe these don't come from Metro Detroit. Maybe they're like further down south just a little bit or something where the conditions are better. But circling back, one of the more difficult or challenging things with cooking with sweet potatoes is cutting them. So especially if you have mobility issues, if you have like arthritis in your wrists, I mean, even me myself, relatively healthy person, I still struggle with it. It's just a matter of, dealing with the knife, pushing down, not chopping anything off that you don't want to chop off, So my suggestion and how I have been cutting with sweet potatoes, can everybody see?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So how I do it is I hold my hand like this. So some people, they'll cut like this. If you're cutting with veggies, sometimes you'll chop like that. You don't really want to do that. Does anybody know why? You can get your finger, you could slice something, you could slip, you don't have as much control over the knives. So what I do is you want to put your hand on top, kind of angle it like this, and that's going to basically put all of the weight into the sharpest part of the blade right here. So you're going to put your palm on top, you're going to push down, and then with this arm, you're going to slowly push the thing back, or the knife down. So kind of just like that. Okay? It happens. All right, so again, you can either use your fingers here, but you want to keep your fingers clear. Just going to push down the top and then chop down kind of like that. So with sweet potato fries, you'll see the ones that I made, they're long. So they're not like regular McDonald's French fries or anything where they're like 3 or 4 inches long. These ones are like stringy. They're like about that long. You can make them as long as you want. Show of hands, let's put it to a vote. Who likes their fries crispy? Okay. Who likes their fries, I don't want to say mushy, but who likes them medium? You like it medium? Okay. So the longer that they are, and the thinner that they are, the more likely that they're going to be crunchy or, crunchy. But the thicker that they are, it's going to be more mushy on the inside. So does anybody ever have like potato wedges?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Those are like the perfect example of super thick, not very crunchy depending on how long you cook them for. So I'm gonna make mine about like this. I'm gonna do about that. But again, it really depends on how you want to do it. If you look at the instructions, it says to leave the skin on, cut them into thick French fry strips about 1/4 or 1/2 inch wide. So that's their suggestion. But the only difference really is the cooking time. So these ones are 55 minutes, and that's it takes that long. It really does. You're gonna have to take it out about halfway through, flip them. But if you cut them like a 1/4 inch, like super thin, they're gonna cook faster. That might go without say, but if you've never cooked French fries before, has anybody cooked French fries before from scratch? Okay. So when I first started making French fries, I just thought that I knew what I was doing, and I just jumped right into it. So what I did was I boiled the French fries first, and then I put them in the oven, and I kept on wondering, why are they not getting crispy, right? So it's just a classic example where if you've never cooked something before, it might seem really obvious to somebody else, but I mean, if you've never done it before, I mean, it could seem like one of the more difficult things, Same thing with like cooking bread. If anybody's ever made bread before, it sounds like a super tough, difficult, intricate never-ending process, but I mean, at the end of the day, once you do it once, you're like, that wasn't so bad. You know, it's definitely a labor of love, but.
I use a bread machine.
Oh, okay. All right. And that's okay. That's just fine. It just makes your life a little easier, right?
Yes.
Okay. So once you chop up the fries or the potatoes, you can put them into a nice little mixing bowl. All you're really going to do is mix it with some oil. So it calls for canola oil. The reason that you're not going to want to use olive oil for this recipe, does anybody know why? Temperature, high heat, and somebody said taste. Pretty much all of those things. So olive oil has a lower combustion point. It's going to burn a lot easier and a lot faster than other oils, which in turn is going to affect the taste. So if you cook them for too long, they can brown or blacken, and then it just ruins the taste. So we're going to put in about a tablespoon of canola oil. We're going to mix that up. I usually ask like my partner, my friend, or my mom, or whoever I'm cooking with to put the seasonings in while I'm doing this so that the seasoning disperses equally. So like right now, since I'm by myself, if I put the pepper and the salt in, it's just going on top, right? And then you just got to mix it up and mix it around. But if I'm doing this while somebody else is adding in the seasoning, I don't know. It could just be a me thing. So preheat the oven to 450. Scrub and rinse the sweet potatoes. Pat it dry. You're going to leave the skin on, or if you want to take them off. If you leave the skin on, though, that only adds to the fiber content. In a large bowl, you're going to mix it with all of the seasonings. And then toss. You're going to pop them on a pan. These were some ones that I was messing around a little bit with the temperature earlier. So these are the ones that I put in at the beginning of the session. As you can see, they're little. They don't look like McDonald's golden fries because why? Why do these not look like golden fries?
They're already orange.
They're already orange. That's a good point.
No flour and the extra stuff they put on.
No flour. They're also not fried. So when you bake things versus frying it, granted I did use oil, so in a way I guess they are kind of getting fried, but bake fried. So they're going to look a little bit different. So if you have kids or something and they're like, I'm not going to eat that, that's burnt. No, it's the skin. It's just the way that it was baked. Try it and tell me what you think. So you're going to put those on the pan. You're going to bake it at 450 for about 55 minutes. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to set those down in there. So we're going to wait for those to bake. We're going to move on now to the chicken burgers. You have a question?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you know the difference between sweet potatoes and yams?
I don't, but I have been asked that question enough where I should know the answer by now. I do not know.
I don't either.
Yeah, I'm really not. Does anybody know the difference between sweet potatoes and yams?
They taste the same.
That was what I thought.
Yeah.
I feel.
We got a lot of string here, the yam.
Oh,
The sweet potato don't have that.
so when you're making like a sweet potato pie,
Yeah, they have the stringy stuff in it. The yam.
kind of like pulp or fibers and stuff.
Fibers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm really not sure. Last time, I feel like I did ask somebody and they told me that it was pretty interchangeable, that there really isn't a huge difference. I don't know if I buy it.
Well, there are also purple sweet potatoes. I don't know if anyone knows that. Purple sweet potatoes. Yeah, and they're purple.
I have not. All right, so we're going to move right along to the chicken burgers.
Okay, you want to know?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
While both yams and sweet potatoes are root vegetables, they are distinct in their origin and appearance, flavor, and nutritional profile.
Okay.
Yams are starchy and have a mild flavor, while sweet sweet potatoes are sweeter and have a richer color and texture. And hopefully that's accurate, right? That comes from AI.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So what? I'm sorry. One more time. It says they're
Yes?
both yams are root veg. They're just distinct. Oh, okay. So they're different but close. That's pretty much what it is. Huh. Interesting. A yam is starchier. Sweet potatoes are sweeter. Sounds like they're both different, but they're
The inside of the yam's light.
yeah. Huh.
Thank you for that.
The more you know. Yes. Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate that. All right. So let's get started with the chicken burgers. So, I do apologize, but it doesn't look like the instructions fully printed. It looks like it automatically printed like this instead of that. So, with the instructions, it's pretty easy. It's just like the French fries, where you have one thing, another thing, you mix them, and you bake them. So, what I use is I got 1 pound of ground turkey. The ones that we have today are turkey meat. I tried looking for ground chicken, but I just couldn't find enough ground chicken, but ground turkey there was a bunch of it. So we're doing ground turkey for the demonstration purposes. Bell pepper, some onion, we got some seasonings, a cup of water, a little bit of oil. But basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna have your meat, you're gonna chop up your vegetables. So take it from me, when I made this, I learned very quickly that when making this recipe, you will much rather want to work with vegetables that are this size than vegetables that are this size. Does anybody know why? Anybody want to guess why? Why would something like this be better? Cooks more evenly. That's a good guess.
Mix.
It releases more of the nutrients.
Pretty much all those things. So believe it or not, there's like more moisture gets released in the smaller ones into the meat. So it keeps the meat more moist. And I think you mentioned it as well, when you're forming the patties, something like this is going to be really difficult to keep the meat together. So you'll be like making the patty, and here, I'll just do it like this a little bit. You'll be like making the patty, and you're like, why isn't it forming a patty? It's because the pepper's too big. Yeah, it's sticking out.
It separates from the meat.
Exactly. So when you're making these, finer is better. If anybody has like a food processor at home or anything like that, that is really helpful. Just make sure it doesn't like turn it into a paste. You know, if you're going to do the food processor, make sure you do it on the chop, not the pulse or the. There's a couple other settings. Basically, just make sure it doesn't turn into like a paste, because you still want the pieces. So you're going to add in those. I also have some garlic powder that I'm going to add. I have some onion powder. I also have some parsley. So this is just what the recipe calls for. You can mix it up a little bit. You could add an egg for maybe added protein, or even it can help bind it. Absolutely. You could also add in some breadcrumbs, which will also help aid in the forming process. Instead of parsley, if you don't like parsley, you could do cilantro. You could do Italian herbs and seasonings. This is where you could really get creative. You could do. There's like the Slap Your Mama seasoning, or have you guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's really good. You just want to be a little careful with that, because it's usually kind of high in sodium. But that's why nutrition facts and serving sizes are always your best friend. So you're always going to want to check and see what the serving size is prior to you just kind of dumping it in. And again, I know I mentioned in classes previous that I always suggest seasoning your meals after it's done cooking, so saving seasoning for one of the last steps. With burgers, it's a little difficult. You know, you're making this, so it's kind of hard to season it at the end. But you can always make the patties and at the very end season it on top. So you're gonna mix that together. Let me see. So this calls for 4. So you should be able to make 4 burgers from this. Since I made sliders for us, I was able to make, I think, like 6 or 7 from one tube, but you're going to want to make it about this big. So this recipe, if in the instructions it says to pan fry it. So what they want you to do is take some oil and some water. We're going to fill it in the pan. And what it's doing is you're going to use the oil, obviously, so that it doesn't stick. And the water is going to help kind of steam it. So it's going to steam it just a little bit. Now, does anybody know one of the concerns with what I'm doing right now could be? Exactly. I'm mixing some oil and some water. So, not to say that you can't do that, because there's a right way to do it, which is be gentle, make sure that there's not too much of one thing, and you're going to want to add the oil first. So if you add oil first, it'll coat the pan a little bit, and then you can pour in the water around the edges. So I'll show you that in a quick second. What I also did is I experimented a little bit, and I found out that if you don't want to fry these up on the pan, you can put it in at 420. So it's an easy way to remember it. Put it in at 420 for 20 minutes. So 420. So if you want to bake these instead, you're just going to put them on a pan. You don't want them to be any more than about like a ½ an inch thick. Make them evenly spaced. Put it at 420. Does anybody know what the internal temperature should be if you're dealing with like poultry or chicken?
165?
There you go. Exactly. Yep, so it should be 165. It should hold that temperature for, I think, 15 seconds. So you should be able to put the thermometer in there. It'll go all the way up to 165 or over, and it should stay there for at least 15 seconds. So if it goes all the way up and then it slowly starts dipping down, it means there's something wrong. If it doesn't get all the way up to 165, it means there's definitely something wrong. So that's a good way to do it. So again, I went ahead for everybody in attendance and I made all of our sliders ahead of time. So they're actually heating up in the oven right now. They're all pre-temped. They all are all set. I temped them and prepped them ahead of time. So for these, I didn't see a thermometer in here, so I'm going to make these, but these ones we're not going to serve because I have other ones for us. So we're going to wait for this to get a little warm, probably. So this goes from 1 to 10. So if you're working with an electric stove, one of the downsides is that it can be kind of difficult to gauge the temperature, like I've mentioned before. So I like to say start low and slowly add your way up.
We've got a question from the chat.
Perfect. Let's read it.
Someone wants to know, are there vegetarian sliders that would work with this meal?
I'm glad somebody asked that. Okay, so the question is, are there any vegetarian options or substitutions that we could make to make these burgers? Black beans. So we made those veggie black bean quesadillas. So what you could do is you could take black beans, lentils, rice, mix those together. Now, to use as a binding agent, you're probably going to want to smash it. Remember how we mashed it together with the quesadillas? So whoever asked that question, what you can do is take some beans, take some legumes or lentils or something similar, mix them with veggies, and mash them. So when you mash the beans, it releases the inside, which is, how would you describe the inside of a cooked bean? Mushy? Mushy, yeah, it's got mushy, it's got some consistency to it. So when you mash it up, you can make those into burger patties. If you're going to do that, I would suggest either including breadcrumbs, or if you eat eggs, if you're a full vegetarian or a vegan, stick with breadcrumbs, but if you can snag an egg, I would do that to help aid in the binding process. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for typing it. If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free. Does anybody else have any suggestions about vegetarian substitutions that you can make?
I was gonna say, I think it's fennel that you can substitute for eggs.
Fennel?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
I feel like I've seen it before. I know what fennel is, but would you just like chop it really finely?
You put it in water and it'll gel up.
No way.
Or chia seeds, or the liquid off of the chickpeas, that makes
like an egg white consistency stuff.
Oh, okay.
And you could also use millet for your patty.
You said millet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If my friend Pauline was here, she'd tell you all kinds of stuff, but she's strictly a vegan and no meat, no eggs, no dairy for her, and she tells me all sorts of stuff. But
Okay. All right.
And
I also
think rice would work too. Cook rice.
rice could probably work too.
Yeah.
I feel like tofu, if you were to get creative, you could probably also do tofu. All right. So does anybody know what I'm doing right now? Why did I just put one pepper on here?
You testing the heat.
I'm testing the heat. Absolutely. So that's one thing that I struggle with electric stoves is gauging the temperature. So I put one single thing in there. Once it starts bubbling up, then I know that it's good to put the rest of the stuff up, and then it's good to get up to temp. So we're gonna wait for that. It's getting there. Maybe about like 30 more seconds, and I'm gonna start putting the patties on. So what I got for us today also is I got us some lettuce and some tomatoes. So those are some fun little condiments. You can also put red onion on there, cheese. You can always put cheese, make them like a whole little cheeseburger thing. If you didn't want to do like a chicken burger, you could always get some chicken breast or turkey breast, shred it, and make like pulled pork sandwiches with pulled chicken, pulled turkey sandwiches. Maybe opt for like a low sodium sauce. You could also really easily make sloppy joes, just like this with some chicken or ground turkey. So not to say that beef is inherently bad, but there are some studies and correlations between high consumption of red meat sources and higher issues with like heart concerns, blood pressure. But again, if you're just having it in moderation, you should be fine. But all in all, it is well known that lean protein sources like chicken and turkey are usually better, usually healthier. So here's what we're going to do. Let me see this. So this is supposed to make 4. Yeah, just about that. Just like that. So and you make them about that big. Now one thing that I will say too, try to flatten them out and make them bigger. With the expectation that they will shrink. So when you're making patties and when you're putting them on here, make them just a little bit bigger, and you'll see, can everybody see the pan? Okay, I made one. This is about how big it should be. This is a little too small, and this is way too small. And when it's done cooking, hopefully you will see the difference in how they, you'll see the difference. So,
You ever did it with salmon?
pardon me?
You ever did it with salmon?
I have not ever done it with salmon.
No, it'll form up just like a burger.
Oh.
They'll hold together and everything.
Wait, that sounds really good, actually. I've had like crab patties,
Yeah,
Krabby Patties, or okay. So we have the patties in there. Now, what they say to do to help aid in the cooking process is you're going to add a little bit of water. It says about a 1/4 cup. I'm just going to do a little bit just to help it get steaming. I'm going to put it towards the edges so it doesn't splash up, so that it kind of mixes with the oil in the middle. Honestly, I don't even know if water is super necessary because there's already a lot of moisture that's going to be leaking from there, but doing that helps steam it and helps them cook. So we'll leave them there for about 10 minutes on each side. Again, if it's starting to smoke or if you smell burning, either you don't have enough water, the temperature's too high, something's off. So with those, you can also, like I mentioned, put them inside of the oven. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plate it up and show you guys what we made. So these are the ones that I made at home. All right, so these are the ones that I made at home. Again, these are the ones that are at, these ones are baked. These are the ones that I baked. They're pretty warm, so I'm gonna let them cool off for a little bit. before we start plating them and giving them to you guys, but I'm going to plate one just so we can see how pretty it looks before our time ends, and then we'll say goodbye and we'll call it good. So,
I have a question.
please.
You steaming them you're doing a little frying on the top of the stove, and then you put a little steam on it. It's healthier for the ones in the oven, right?
Is it healthier to do it in the oven, is what you're asking?
Right, because when you fry stuff, that makes it a little bit more fattening or whatever.
Sure, you are adding oil to it, absolutely. Oil isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's when there's too much in your diet. But if your doctor's saying something, if your doctor's telling you to cut it out, listen to them over me, absolutely. But in general, a little bit shouldn't be too bad. I did use a little bit of oil on here so that they didn't stick. So if you don't use some kind of oil or something to help it not stick, you might run into some issues.
Yeah,
So.
Is that Pam or the spray oil or whatever?
Yeah, I just use some,
Yeah.
yep, just any kind of generic spray oil would be just fine. Okay. Any kind should be just fine. I don't think there's one better than the other. All right. There you have it. So like I mentioned again, I don't know, I wish these were a little bit less brown, but they're still pretty good. Again, you're working with sweet potatoes, so they're not going to look like McDonald's golden beautiful French fries. But there you have it. So you got your chicken slider and some sweet potato fries. Not bad, right? All right. So there's our recipe. I'm just going to let these continue cooking, but I am going to say goodbye to everybody who was kind enough to join us online. Thank you for your questions. Again, there will be no meeting next week. I will be here later on this afternoon for your produce boxes. And here's Dayana. Perfect. All right, so Dayana's gonna talk to you guys a little bit about protein. I'm gonna clear off this. Does anybody have any last minute questions about anything?
You know, just a comment though, I think Teresa mentioned frying, but there wasn't really like deep frying where you
Not
put it
really, but
in a lot of
you need the mic.
grease or
Not really,
whatever,
but
so
you need the mic.
that little
Oh, I thought you were
oil,
asking.
you know, you would-
It's negligible, is kind of how it is. It's there, it exists, but it's pretty small. It's not gonna cause too much harm. But again, if your doctor is saying cut it out entirely, I would still listen to them over me.
I just want to make a comment. Sometimes I use the air fryer for sweet potato fries. And what I'll do is coat my sweet potatoes with a little olive oil or something and put them in the air fryer, and it doesn't smoke the house up and all that when I use that. So
Yeah, air fryers are good. Air fryers help a lot. The only pain is cleaning them, in my experience.
Question. Can you saute the vegetables first before you mix them into your patties?
You could. You could make sure that they cool down completely, because you don't want to be working with warm meat when you're making the patties, because it won't hold its shape. But if you like a crunch in your patty, I would wait to just cook them in the meat. So if there's no further questions, I will allow Dayana to get started. See what we're chatting about.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dayana. Hello to everybody at home. Oh. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Is it? I can't hear it. Oh.
So I think the microphone is just so that those who are tuning in can hear. So you guys might not hear it amplified at all. It's just so that they can hear it on the camera.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Dayana. Hello to everybody at home. And let's go ahead and talk about proteins. So what do you guys think about when you hear the word proteins? Meat. Okay. Meats. Okay. So as we know, protein is one of the 5 main food groups that you would see on the My Plate poster. And if you didn't know, the My Plate poster tells us that these are the 5 food groups that we need to have on our plate when we have a healthy meal. And protein is one of those 5 main groups. Now, protein is known as America's favorite food group. That's because Americans tend to consume more protein than anything. They also tend to have really big portion sizes of protein, right? So in our discussion, we're just going to talk about the importance of proteins, right? Daily intake guidelines. So how much protein you should be eating in your daily diet. We'll talk about a couple of protein-rich food options. And then we'll end it off with a couple of ways that you can incorporate proteins into your everyday diet. So just starting off, what is a protein, right? So a protein is an essential nutrient that our bodies need in order to grow, and in order to accomplish various vital functions. Can any of you guys think of any bodily functions that we need that require the use of proteins? Okay, exercise, build muscle. Anyone else?
If you're online, feel free to chat.
Yeah, feel free to comment any of your answers. And then our person that is on our end will shout out your answers for me. But yes, what you guys said was absolutely right, though. So proteins can help, one, build and repair the cells and the tissues in our body. So our muscles and our bones, right? It also helps to transport nutrients because protein does act as a binder. It also supports our immune system, and it also provides a lasting energy source for our bodies if our carbohydrate intake is low. So when proteins are broken down, right, by our stomach acids, they do produce glucose, right? They do melt down and turn into glucose. And if you did not know, our bodies use glucose as our energy source to complete our daily tasks. So when our energy level is low, protein can be a very nice substitute for that. Proteins are made of essential building blocks, also known as amino acids. There are hundreds of different types of amino acids that our bodies need. Some are essential amino acids, some are non-essential. Essential amino acids would be the things that you would get from your food, so from your meats, from your vegetables, from your fruits and things like that. And non-essential amino acids are the ones that our bodies create on our own. So protein is made of about 20 different amino acid combinations that link together to create the proteins for our bodies. So can you guys think of 2 main body parts that require the presence of proteins for growth and development? So 2, okay, bones, yep, absolutely. So bones is one. Anyone else? Yes, muscles. Perfect. Those were the 2 I was looking for. So bones and muscles are made up of proteins, and they require proteins in order to grow and to continue to develop as we age. So why consume protein? So why do you guys think it's important for us to consume protein? I'm not necessarily talking about just meat, but I'm talking about just any form of protein. Why do you think it's important for us to consume it every day? Say that again. Okay, better life. Anyone else? Energy source, absolutely. Cell repair, absolutely. These are great answers. So let's first talk about muscle growth and repair right here at the front. So consistently incorporating protein into your diet can, one, support you in maintaining your current muscle and tissue mass, and it can also promote muscle and tissue growth as you age. So as you age, you do tend to lose your bone density, right? Your muscle density will decrease as you get older. So it's important to make sure that you're eating an appropriate amount of proteins to make sure that you are keeping up with what is needed for your body. Consuming protein can also help to boost metabolism, and it increases fat burning properties within our bodies. So our bodies utilize calories on a daily basis to digest and process the consumption of all the food that we put into our body. And there's a term for this, right? So a higher increase in protein can increase the body's resting metabolic rate. Do any of you guys know what that is? Well, when our bodies metabolize something, what is it doing? Okay, it's using up the food and the things that we put in it. It's burning off calories, so very good. So a resting metabolic rate refers to the amount of calories that the body needs and or excretes while in a resting state. So while you're sitting, while you're sleeping, things like that. And this can aid in accomplishing low-effort daily tasks throughout the night. So which bodily functions require the utilization of resting metabolic rate? What are some low-effort daily tasks that you can think of that utilizes the resting metabolic rate? Sitting, breathing, absolutely. Sleeping, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we got sleeping, we got breathing, blood circulation, cell production, and finally maintaining or regulating your inner body temperature, right? All of these low effort tasks, things that you don't really think about consciously, but your body is doing them unconsciously. It's already happening without having to put too much thought into it. So that's what protein can help with. Protein can also help to reduce appetite and hunger levels. And that's because consuming an appropriate amount of proteins can decrease your appetite levels and promote the feeling of fullness when you're eating. And how do you guys think that's possible? How can eating proteins promote a sense of fullness? So, okay, it sits in your stomach longer, yeah. The way you chew your food, okay, the way you eat it, yeah, absolutely. The way it's prepared, right? Yep, slowing your digestion, absolutely. Now, getting into specifics, we'll start with slowing digestion. This is because the human body requires more time to break down the protein molecules. So going back to what we said before, that proteins are made of amino acids. There's 20 different combinations that link together to create those proteins. So the complexity of that requires our bodies to take a longer time when it comes to breaking down proteins as opposed to breaking down fruits and vegetables, okay? It also decreases it's a hormone that's excreted from the body known as ghrelin, right? And this is a hormone that stimulates the hunger receptors in the body. So this is the hormone that makes our bodies hungry, right? So when we eat protein, it stimulates this hormone and it decreases its, the likeliness of our bodies excreting this, okay? Now let's talk about some forms of protein. So what are some proteins that you guys think about? Like when you hear the word protein, what are some immediate ideas that come to your head? Chicken, okay. Steak, hamburger, fish, meats, okay. Yep, beans, eggs, okay. So yeah, when most people hear the word protein, they tend to think about meats, right? Meat is the most common form of protein. It's everybody's favorite, right? You have dinner, right? Most people are probably going for the meat first, or maybe you're like me and you save the best for last. Meat isn't the only form of protein that we know, right? There are so many other different forms of protein, and it's really good because Jake's lesson and the food boxes that we have are a great source of, non-meat sources of protein, right? So when we're talking about non-meat sources of protein, what do you guys think about? Beans, milk, okay.
That's a good one.
Eggs, peanut butter, absolutely. Any other ones? Anybody at home? Tofu, yep, absolutely. So, yep, we got eggs, we got beans, we got tofu, lentils, tree nuts, seeds, mushrooms, fish, and crustaceans. Oh, wait, no, I don't know why I added fish and crustaceans to the end of that list. But yeah, and all of these are meat substitutes. When you go out and you have, or if you see like an Impossible Burger, or you see like a vegan burger, right? The composition of that burger to get it to look like that meaty texture, that meaty taste, most times includes more than one. I probably say at least 2 foods from the non-meat protein sources, right? So when it comes to incorporating protein into your daily diet, it's important that you achieve your daily protein needs by consuming a variety of foods and drinks that have protein, right? So they got like protein shakes and things like that, protein smoothies, protein supplements as well. But the recommended guidelines when you're consuming protein is to have at least 10 to 35% of your daily food intake come from proteins, right? Not necessarily meat, but just from proteins in general. And this is also dependent on a lot of factors, right? It could be dependent on your age. It could be dependent on your activity level, right? So like the older you are, the more protein that you need because you lose your muscle mass and your bone density as you get older. It's a natural thing. It happens to everybody. Even me right now, even though I'm still young, but as I get older, I lose just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, right? So The older you get, you want to make sure that you're eating just a little bit more protein than usual. Maybe have a couple of more protein options throughout the week. Let's see. So ways to specifically incorporate protein into your diet, right? There's plant sources, right? Like tofu, lentils, beans, brown rice, quinoa, oats, milk, yogurt, plant-based protein powder, protein supplements, right? And then there's the animal sources, right? The chicken, the beef, the fish, the pork, the lamb, you know, it's like a never-ending list, right? But when it comes to eating protein, you want to make sure that you're not eating an excessive amount of meat-based protein sources, right? And now this brings me to this point, which I actually do like this. Does anybody know what is the difference between plant and animal-based protein? Well, and we obviously know that one comes from an animal, right, and one does not, right? But there are some other differences between, could be the amount of protein that each one has, right? Could be preparation styles, right? But what are some differences between plant and animal-based protein?
Animal is fat.
Saturated fat.
Okay, saturated fat, right? Very, very good. So animal-based protein does tend to have a lot more fat than plant-based protein, right? It's the natural fat from the animal. And so the main difference, right, that I want you guys to take away from this is that animal-based protein sources are usually considered as complete proteins. Anybody know what I mean when I say a complete protein?
Yes, all the amino acids that you need to do everything that protein should do.
There you
Exactly.
go.
It has all those amino acids that our bodies cannot produce on their own. So it has all those essential amino acids that we need. And plant-based protein sources are considered to be incomplete, and that is because they lack either one or more of the 9 essential amino acids that our bodies can't produce on our own. So things like tree nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains, tofu, and rice, right? Those would be considered as incomplete proteins, right? And so you want to make sure that you don't eat too much protein, right? Because I said before that protein is America's favorite food group. Everybody likes it. People tend to have really big portion sizes of protein. They're like, let me load it up, right? Especially depending on what you do, right? If you're an athlete, you probably eat more protein than usual, right? If you work out a lot, if you're a bodybuilder, you probably work out a lot, right? Because your body is excreting and it's losing that muscle mass at a very rapid rate. So you might have to take up a high protein diet to make sure that you're replacing what's being loss. So you just want to make sure that you don't eat too much protein, right? Because as I said, right, when protein is burned, right, in our stomachs, right, and it's digested, it creates glucose, right, creates sugar. So if you put too much protein into your body and you put too much sugar into your body, what could happen? You could become a diabetic, right? It can raise your blood pressure, right? It can also make you gain weight, absolutely, because if there is too much protein in our bodies, right, and our bodies can't get rid of it, or the needs have already been met, right, then the protein is just going to sit, right, and it's just going to become fat, and then eventually that means you're going to gain weight. So you want to make sure that you keep a nice balance between your red meats and your lean meats, as well as your plant-based protein sources. I would probably say cut back on red meats, eat more lean meats, right, and also make sure that you have those plant-based proteins in between, right? It can help you to meet those daily guidelines, right? It can even be through drinks, right? Because most people tend to, you know, when they think about proteins, they think about what they eat, right? But there are also those protein-rich drink sources that can help you to reach your daily guidelines.
I have a question.
Yes.
Incomplete and complete proteins, if you are just using vegetables, that would be a reason why they would mix rice and beans together?
Yeah, to kind of like make up for what one doesn't have, the other one can have. So usually that's why people like to combine a lot of the incomplete and the complete proteins. Yeah, like usually a composition of a veggie burger has a nice balance of incomplete and complete proteins. Absolutely. Yes, you got a question?
Yes, I would like to ask you about wild game, venison, buffalo. Is there more protein in that type of meat opposed to your beef, chicken, and pork? Wild game.
Now that I'm not necessarily sure. Now the fat concentration is probably less in the wild game. I'm sure it's probably a lot higher in like the beef, the pork, the chicken, and things like that. But as far as the amount of protein, because I know each animal is different, right? So the wild game could have more protein, but it could also not. That I'm not sure of.
It may be leaner.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I know that the wild game, that is definitely a leaner option. Absolutely, yes.
I wanted to ask about the whole protein. So you were saying that when vegetarians mix the different proteins to make sure that they get enough. So what, I may have missed it, but what are some of the whole proteins that do not come from our meat source?
Okay. So some of the complete.
Some of the complete proteins.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, complete proteins would be things like eggs, beans, tofu, lentils, your tree nuts, mushrooms, seeds, things like that.
Those are complete
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about
Yes.
the protein? I have packets and I've been putting it in my smoothie. So that, should I put the whole pack or just half if I'm gonna eat a lean piece of meat?
If you're gonna eat meat with it, then I would say maybe just half the pack, because then you're gonna have double the protein source, so you don't want to tack on too much. But if you were just having just the drink by itself, one pack is perfectly fine. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You said that protein is turned into glucose.
Mm-hmm.
So does all food groups turn to glucose when we consume it inside? Does it all some type of glucose?
Yeah. It may not be as potent as other sources, but everything that we do put into our bodies does turn into some form of sugar that we use for energy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing, because if you consume protein in large amounts and then you consume
Yeah.
carbs and all of that, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's why just the main thing is just consuming in moderation, making sure you got a balance between those lean proteins and those red meats, and just making sure you're not having too big portion sizes too. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I truly appreciate your presentation today on proteins.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Any more questions? Anybody at home in the comments? Do any of you guys have questions? Nope.
Did you say, I think when you first began, you were talking about the reasons for proteins. I heard your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. So eating protein does help support immune system health. And two, because protein kind of acts as like a binder, right? So as it's going through our immune system, right, it can help our immune systems to like pass through like waste, help break that waste down, right? Once the protein has been, broken down into sugar, right, can also help to support the digestion process as well. Yeah.
I have one more question, because I'm interested because I plan on going vegetarian. So I wanted to ask you, does vegetarians have to have a protein with each meal? Because, oh, okay.
Yeah, you don't have to have a protein with each meal. I mean, it's recommended, right? But it's not like, life or death, right? If you, miss a meal that doesn't have protein, it's okay.
I mean, I was just saying to keep a balanced diet.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't eat the meat,
Mm-hmm.
protein.
Yeah.
So that's what.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes.
I've heard this some vegetables have protein. So if you, say you eat a combination of the ones that have protein, can you get the sources that you need from the combination of the vegetables?
Absolutely. So I think the more that you eat, right, the different forms of protein that you eat, the better it will be, right? Because what one form of protein has or doesn't have, the other one might have it or it might not have it, right? So there's nothing wrong with having a combination. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Getting back to the, I guess, wild forms of protein.
Like the wild game and things like that. Mm-hmm.
I heard that, like chickens, it's better to have free-range chickens. They will provide more nutrients. Same thing with, I guess, wild caught salmon and stuff that is based on what they eat. And it will better. So
You know what? I did hear something about that too, that the way that, like when it comes to meat sources, animals, right, the way that the animal was raised, the way the animal was brought up, right, can affect the taste, and it can also affect the health contents of the meat that you're eating, right? So like I heard a thing about like cows over in what is it, like China, like Wagyu cows, right? They're like grass fed, right? They live like a softer lifestyle, right? So I hear people say that the meat tends to like taste better or like richer. I even had somebody tell me that like they could taste, like meat tastes bad when the animal is stressed, or like when the animal like was traumatized, right, not having a healthy diet, right, living, you know, in farms, going through processing and things like that. You can taste that stuff, right? So it definitely does make a difference between like free caught and farm raised and things like that. So I think we will go ahead and wrap it up because everybody's eating now, so I don't want to keep taking up too much more of your time. But I want to thank you guys for coming out today, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in at home.
How's the burger?
It looks great.
So again, for those
Enjoying these.